Very good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Rajiv Chibbar, and I'm Vice President with Sajanan Medical Technologies. And it's a privilege today to be on this session. And my session today.
Hi. So I just welcome Dr. Rajiv Chibbar, who is the Vice President of Sajanan Medical Technologies. I'll just give a small introduction of Dr. Rajiv Chibbar. Dr. Rajiv Chibbar is a Senior Corporate Affairs, Policy Communications and Media Strategist with experience across pharmaceuticals, medical device industry, development sector, and education industry. Dr. Chibbar holds a master's degree in journalism and mass communication and a bachelor's degree in English literature from Delhi University. He has a postgraduate diploma in newspaper and feature writing, the Montgomery College, University of Maryland, USA, and pursued a public health leadership in professional course in NCDs from Emory University, Atlanta, and a communication development program in public health engagement by Wellcome Trust, UK, at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He was awarded an honorary doctorate from Aztec University, UNESCO, Mexico in the year June 2019 in the field of global public health communication and policy. He is a member of various government committees, subcommittees in the areas of public health, advocacy, nutrition, tobacco control, NCDs, and climate change, in addition to being on various committees of CII, FICCI, USI, BC, and American Chamber of Commerce. He is a member of Asia Pacific Association of Communication Directors, Hong Kong, the International Society for Disease Surveillance, CDC Atlanta, US, and on the advisory board of International Human Rights Council representing India. He is a founding member of Public Relations Society of India and the founding member of Climate Action Network South Asia, a civil society that led South Asian chapter of a global platform that advocates on climate change, energy, power, and related issues on sustainable development. Dr.
Thank you.
Rajiv Chibbar would be speaking on medical devices, the next big story for India after IT and pharma. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mahendra. Thank you, Mahendra Bhai. It was a great introduction. I mean, I didn't want it long, but thanks a lot.
Since we had time, so I stressed it full.
No. It was a good. Good. Sometimes I also get to revamp what my career span. Anyhow,
Right.
thank you very much, and I thank the organizers for this very warm welcome, as well as a very timely conference. And this is really going to be the need of the hour. I'm fortunately going to present after a lot of senior speakers have presented, people like Dr. Jitendra Sharma, sir, who in any case is called the Meditec Man of India. Abhinav, my colleague, earlier in the session talked a lot about IVDs, and also a couple of others spoke about devices as well as the need for infrastructure care. I attended a couple of sessions and very well curated sessions. Again, coming back to my topic is medical devices, the next big story for India after the IT and the pharma boom. So, I'll just take you through a presentation which I have, and the presentation, I'll just share the screen right now.
We can see your screen.
Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible. Very much.
Yes.
Visible.
Yeah. So as I said, I mean, we're today at in such a period where healthcare has got prominence from all sectors, from in fact every part of the globe, and it's fortunate that India is now being looked at as the next basket for not only pharmaceuticals but also medical devices. And we are here to create the next big story after the IT and pharma boom, which India has been, for the last 20 years being the ruler in the IT and pharma boom. Now is the time for medical devices. So we are looking at an unleashing of the investment potential. I'll just take you through, the entire gamut. So what we are looking at today, good quality, affordable, and comprehensive healthcare for all its citizens is now a universal mantra which we have. So while healthcare infrastructure and indigenous medical device manufacturing are areas in which most countries has achieved self-sufficiency, Unfortunately, the medical device sector in India, which is about 80% import dependent, needs focused attention and policy interventions to achieve self-sufficiency. And here is where the next story for India can really develop. So, I mean, just to take everyone back to certain issues, in 2015, the government of India included medical device sector as its ambitious Make in India program. Since then, there's been various policy initiatives by the medical device regulators to really look at uplifting this sector. I mean, we've got an entire ecosystem which has been addressed by the government, which is whether it is rolling out of the medical devices rule 2017 to regulate the medical devices, the introduction of 100% FDI policy to attract foreign investments, addressing infrastructure gaps by setting up medical device parks or incubator accelerators, boosting innovation by supporting startups. So these policies are evolving and changing frequently, which brings in an unprecedentedly a new rule which we want to see, a new regime which we want to see. And indigenously developed medical devices, they have been really at the forefront. Today, the medical device industry in India is at a surge with almost around 800 manufacturers and 1,000 plus startups. So you can imagine over the couple of years, we've achieved not only existing manufacturers who have really made a mark, but we've also intervened into 1,000 plus startups alone in this sector. So the industry has expectation in terms of policy roadmap for catalyzing this sector, for making it self-sustainable. So what we're going to look within this particular time frame, which I cover in the next 40 odd minutes, is how key policy initiatives are going to boost the medical device sector, and the highlights that the medical device industry has really had, the expectations and the envisaged roadmap for developing a conducive ecosystem for fostering this sector in India with an immense growth potential. So, friends, most of you are already aware of this sector, so I won't delve too much into it. But just to give you a couple of strides around it, the global market for medical devices is over around $220 billion at the moment, and the medical device industry in India is presently valued at around $5.2 billion, and this contributes to 4 to 5% of the US $90.6 billion healthcare industry which India contributes. The market size for this sector in India through retail sales is estimated to be over $10 billion, which is around 61,800 crores in 2013-14, and has now steadily grown over 75,000 crores. Which means we're growing at a CAGR of almost like 15 to 70%, 17% currently, which is evaluated around $15 billion in India. The sector is highly import dependent, which I already said, which is around 80% of the requirements are being met through imports. And considering the huge import dependency and immense growth potential, the government of India has included medical devices as a flagship sector, not only under the Make in India, but also recently under the Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar Bharat spiel, which he gave. So it's a structured push and policy impetus that this sector is going to have. All medical devices are not regulated in India, and therefore, in the absence of holistic regulatory regime, made in India medical devices lack credibility and the market acceptance. But we are now going to really have a churning around of this particular vision which we have for this. So if I tell you the largely Indian manufacturers are divided into roughly 7 segments. As you see here in this particular slides, these segments are disposables, consumables, electronics, equipments, implants, diagnostics, instruments, and I've enlisted certain domestic companies which have really championed, although global companies are very well known, but it's the domestic companies which are lesser known or lesser heard about. So I've enlisted them so that people are aware about this entire sector. As I said, the import dependency in India is pretty high, and we are almost around 80% import dependent. And our Honorable Minister Sadanand Gauraji, at a latest press conference a couple of weeks back, in fact, did mention upon this point. And there are certain promising initiatives by the Department of Pharmaceuticals, as well as the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the Prime Minister's office, that will really lead to something like curtailing this import segment. But it's very intriguing that we are presently over 40,000 crores in terms of import dependency. Now, looking at the export summary in the sixth category, medical devices, which we have in the year 2019-20, we already have clocked around 16,261 crores. But that's largely because we look at the last 6 months which have happened pretty conducively for us. And that's where now the new spiel and the new momentum towards making India the next story for medical devices needs to get looked at. So India is a big market for medical device imports by 5 countries. So if you go back and you look at this, the kind of import summary which we have, 5 countries prominently dominate the whole ecosystem: US, Germany, China, to some extent Singapore, Netherlands. And the major share of medical device imports in this country is from US, and while Germany stands second. And in terms of the highest quantum of exports, we really rely on such countries. But as per the import-export analysis in the medical device sector recorded by the Ministry of Commerce, between 2012 and 2018, the import of medical devices in India has increased almost by 16.8%, whereas the export right now in the last 5 years. So it's also very encouraging if you look at the export value which we have. So the import value in any case was pretty high, but the export value which you see right now, that's very encouraging. It has increased to almost like 25.7%. It's almost, the figures don't give that hunky-dory story, but looking at the present increase and looking at the kind of ecosystem which we have achieved over the last at least 3 to 4 years, this is seriously a jump which India is looking at, and we are going to really look at it pretty fast. I mean, in that sense, India is now galloping at a very dominant speed. But amongst the exporters portfolio, USA is the chief destination for exports and contributed about 15% of the export trade. Singapore, Germany, and China were the other leading export destinations, with shares for almost around 7% to 6.7% and 6.4% respectively. Interestingly, the European Union, which includes Germany, cumulatively constitutes to around 21.7% of the total export trade from India, which means, USA, Germany, China, Japan, and Singapore constitute to 5 largest exporters of high technology medical equipment to India. So you can imagine, even though I showed you in the previous graph a whopping import summary of over 41,000 crores, and the export summary which India presently has to 16,000 crores, you can imagine the kind of difference which we are still grappling with. But the good news is, as I said earlier, we are increasing it, and it's touched around 25-26% presently. So, in fact, even if you look at the diagnostic imaging medical device import trade, earlier in the session, my former colleague, he basically said that medical device import trade in the diagnostic imaging sector has grown to 24.9% from US, 833.5 million, which is roughly around quarter to 6,000 crores in 2018-19. To almost like US $1.4 billion, which is something around 7,200 crores for the year 1920. Similarly, medical consumables import trade has shown a decent growth of around 24.7% from US $624.9 million, which is roughly around 4,300 crores in 2018-19, to almost like 7 $780 million, which is around 5,500 crores for the year 2019 and 20. And in vitro diagnostic devices import trade has really grown by 25.7 percent, which is approximately around 512 US million dollars, to almost like 644 million dollars US million dollars, which is roughly around 4,500 crores for the year 1920 itself. Now, this exponential increase is what is the real challenge which India faces. So I'll just show another slide here. The Indian import from the top 5 countries as of now, and which I just talked about. You can see the graphs. You can see, the electronic equipments, the disposables, consumables, they've really surged high, and the countries are there in front of you. I mean, we look at these countries, we really think that we want to achieve that kind of growth with our exports also. So that's the kind of vision which we would really want to have. Now, there's been an immense, background which has been covered by the government of India, the Prime Minister's, Atmanirbhar spiel, or we talk about, Ayushman Bharat and other sectors which have really worked well for India. That has really contributed to a new regime which India is now going to have. While the medical devices of India with a stringent safety and quality profile have acceptability in the US, which is a highly regulated market, but there are India still faces a classical set of challenges. Primary amongst them is the lack of motivation to manufacture medical devices with non-viable margins due to the ease of low-cost imports, which are pre-owned equipment, and coupled with the absence of robust regulatory framework for medical devices. Now, the other key challenges which we face in the medical device industry in India, this includes lack of avenues for pooling and bridging of adequate fresh talent into the sector, lack of pathways for uptake of innovations in supply chain, lack of subsidies and incentives appropriate to the levels of providing a bonus to the industry. So, I mean, it's a amalgamation of a lot of things which have really pushed this kind of level to us. But then we have achievements in front of us. The Make in India achievement is the biggest testimonial which we have today. Under the medical devices, under the Andhra Medical Tech Zone, which Dr. Jitendra Sharma earlier in the session did talk about, the Kalam Institute of Healthcare was established in Vizag. That is doing stupendous work in terms of coming out with research, R&D, and also making a niche marquee amongst publications within India, which was, in the medical devices domain, which was earlier missing. So there has been, steps which have been taken by the government of India to address some of the challenge. One is such as the introduction of the Medical Devices Rule 2017, or the classification of occupational standards under healthcare sector, which we are looking at right now, whether it is, the Healthcare Skill Council, the competency to mapping the biomedical engineers under the IBSC, which is the Indian Biomedical Skills Consortium, initiatives for export promotion by the Department of Commerce, preferential procurement of, public procurement of healthcare items, which we are actually having. There were price caps on stents and knee implants, which have been really impactful, and there's been a long history around why these were really required for the NPPA, as well as the DOP and CDSO really moved into such practices. The Meditec parks in Vizag and Hyderabad, they have been an ecosystem which has really carved a niche for themselves. This ecosystem is being built looking at the entire Western gamut, how connectivity is required, the R&D services are required, the kind of labs which are required. India has a very skewed lab ratio when it comes to the entire clusters of medical devices which we have. So we need to look at to increase that kind of thing. The setting up of operationalization of the Andhra Medtech Zone and the Kalam Institute, in fact, they accelerated the indigenously developed technologies and the government's decision to have more IITs for speeding up research in the country. That has been a ballpark, a landmark decision by the government to really take forward the vision to make India the next medtech destination, and also to look at healthcare holistically. Some of the area, however, which are still attended to and require more concentrated and comprehensive approach are there. But while many of these steps have been comprehensive efforts by the government of India, ministries, departments from the health and family welfare, science, technology, whether it's Niti Aayog, whether it's the pharmaceuticals ministry, the Ministry of Electronics, because we are coupling a lot of devices with electronic devices. They are, however, there's still a need for central information pooling and coordination mechanisms that has been felt by not only the industry but also the government and the people like Kalam Institute, etc., have been asking for. So I talked about Biomedical Skills Development Consortium. We are looking at a large set of skilled manforce, and in fact, healthcare today deploys almost like a huge employment potentiality. And if we have skilled manforce, if we have skilled workers, we'll be able to really meet achievements in a very fast way. There's multiple things which are happening, and in fact, a couple of key achievements with the Department of Pharmaceuticals has really achieved is sponsoring of new conferences which are happening on regulations. There's been a 5% surcharge on some of the devices, which is bringing it to a playing level itself. The whole price caps removal, which was not allowed, is something which is again putting India at the top, and then we would have good competency here itself. The PLI scheme, which is the production link incentive scheme, which the government of India just announced a couple of weeks back, is something which is very good. And in fact, as I was hearing the Secretary Pharmaceuticals today herself, Madam did talk about the fact that it's not only 4 or 5 states which are now in the race to achieve the PLI scheme and also come up with medical devices park. It's now over 15 to 17 states which are in this particular race. So this means that even at the state government level, there is an acceptance that medical devices is now growing, and the growing need to couple healthcare with the entire engineered medical devices sector is being understood. The creation of Pharma Bureau, in fact, is now going to be a new area itself, which will give a lot of acumen in terms of repository as well as data accumulation in that particular sector itself. So there's been a lot of achievements which we are looking at. And this is why now India is going to have a strategic advantage. We did it in cars and the automobile industries with motorcycles. We looked at mobile phones, and these are, manufacturers competitive and are growing. We have them with us. And as I am a representative of IMED, we looked at the entire gamut itself and looked at the fact that in the next 5 years, we are poised to really gallop over $15 billion to calculate in terms of the medical device industry itself. There have been certain, areas which we've looked into. For instance, customs duties. People who would be tuned are already aware about this initiative which has been taken. We look at a strategic advantage which India has. There is a business viability now. And in fact, as I said, with more than 15 to 17 states trying to really contribute, trying to really, be in the race of converting themselves into a medical devices hub is really a viability. We've got product development which is happening. There's a quality credibility which India is slowly gaining globally. For instance, if I look at my own company, Sajanan Medical Technologies, we have now almost touched around nearly 100 globally, and the European Union market as well as key emerging markets we've been able to capture. And that's because, the kind of product credibility which has been precision to engineering products and ethical marketing is something which the Indian medtech industry is really now going to get a strategic advantage. So what we don't seek, and in fact, that is where the big story needs to really, swell on. We don't seek as global manufacturers. We don't seek direct subsidy. What we seek is revenue support model and a capex reduction assistance. And the most important thing is supporting policies. And today, I must say, with the kind of policies that the Department of Pharmaceuticals is coming up with, CDSCO has been really assisting each and every medical device company, whether it's the smallest device which is required to the high-end category device which are required. They've been really, really assisting us towards, getting that kind of support, getting that kind of policy. But the idea here is to not only, remain policy driven, but also, if we have to be Atmanirbhar, we need to develop a larger domestic market to create a medical device ecosystem that is being created. Hyderabad is doing a great job in terms of creating it. We've got Tamil Nadu as an example, which is doing it. Gujarat has led the entire industry over the last couple of years. So there has been initiatives that have been taking place. So, couple of things which we want, which India can actually do to make that story really swell, to make that next big leap happen, is we need to look at the import duties. I mean, first is the steps taken on addressing the inverted duty structure. We all are aware of this inverted duty structure. We need the government to address that urgently. The next is the 2.5 concessional duty on inputs from manufacturing. That needs to be given a similar support that has been given to global companies also. The 10 to 15 basic duty, which is needed to offset almost the import cost reduction post the GST, needs to also be corrected. So we're looking at a long-term policy at this particular point of time. We're also looking at a policy where we buy Indian, where we look at the preferential pricing for our domestic manufacturers. The ICMED, which IMED looked at, is something which could be looked at. I mean, it's not another level of policy saturation, but we're trying to look at quality saturation here. We're trying to look at how quality can be enhanced through such certifications. We're looking at also, there's a US FDA clause which goes into a lot of Government of India hospitals can be excluded. If you look at countries like the US, China, the big ones which have already, shaped the story, we would also want to look at a similar kind of, parity game which is played within the domestic manufacturing regimes itself. We're looking at consumer protection. I mean, all this simmers down to ultimately the consumer who's going to look at it. The enforcement of MRPs, the reforms of DPCO, tax-based disincentive on MRP is something which we would want to look at. Cap trade margins, that's pretty much talked upon, and in fact, right now it's not that discussed within the ministries, but I'm sure shortly it will be something which will be discussed upon. So there is a huge gamut. Regulations need to be looked at. Incorrect regulations, they discourage investments hugely. From a domestic manufacturer or it's from a global multinational. Ultimately, if a multinational sets shop here, they would also look at and face similar kind of disadvantages. So we're looking at a regulatory framework where we could have separate laws for a regulator. We could regulate market access. We could look at pseudo manufacturing to be illegal. Sometimes there's the entire import which is happening, and it's only a small portion of a particular device which is made here, and that's the kind of ill will which kind of like generates. So penal provisions like the auto industry, that's something which one has never looked into, and in fact, if the ministry looks into it very stringently, there'll be a huge sea change when we look at the kind of ethicality which will be used here in this country. The idea is minimum governance. The government talked about it, and we would also look at it not from an inverted structure, but from a pyramid structure itself, where there's a consumer, there's a manufacturer, there's a confirmatory assessment body, an accreditation body which looks at it, regulatory authority which talks about it, and then ultimately a government legislation which happens. So all this needs to have a new churning altogether. The interim strategy that needs to be looked into. I mean, we're looking at an interim strategy. There is a certification by the Quality Council of India. I think there'll be mandatory, requirements in the coming years, where we would be looking at making an ISO 13485 mandatory. Additional products which can be bought under the Medical Devices Rule 2017. Restriction of imports of pre-owned equipment is something which hampers the domestic part of India. So we're looking at a whole host of certain strategies, interim strategies, which could really take us to the next big leap in that sense. We are obviously R&D in India is picking up, and over the last couple of months, everyone would have been seeing that how the Indian manufacturers and the medical device companies have really got together and really converted this opportunity, the COVID opportunity. But that is because over the past couple of years, R&D has got an acceleration. We want that momentum and acceleration to be really going forward. So commercialization and is not an academic acclaim. So we need that there should be something which gets into the system pretty robust. The whole mechanism of R&D, which is acceptable to DST, DBT, ICMR, BIREC, and other similar agencies, needs to be understood and needs to be really given to the Indian industry itself. The capability we have, in fact, with the entire PLI scheme and also the medical devices park, there is a need to upgrade the test labs. The access to low-cost testing needs to be there. Accreditation of labs and building a brand image around it is something which is a requirement. So if you look at this slide, this is only a wish list, and it actually goes further and further into it. In fact, I'm right now working with the Department of Pharmaceuticals and NIPERS to really come up with not only the industry academia linkages, but also how the academia and how institutes like NIPERS could really be able to supplement this growth with the medical device industry itself. So we're looking at a huge set of capability for our own development. We're defining priorities, the Ministry of Health and the WHO to map priority disease and target list of priority devices is very important. We've seen this recently through this pandemic, and the momentum should be going on. There is a need to create a special purpose vehicles like China has for the government to jointly own partnerships and IPs, etc. So we are also looking at that kind of a win-win situation. Government colleges and hospitals, they need to really spruce up the trial purchases and allow trials to be happening. Right now, what's happening is it's happening somewhere else, and the data is only flowing into it. So we need to really look at it from a larger point of view. So the ultimate thing is that with all this, we need to be also politically insulated. The idea is to have a body, to have medtech parks, to have a management which has medical device industry representatives, government officers from the central, state, and including ex-retired people who have really worked towards the medical device industry itself, the healthcare industry, the pharma industry. There are our big brothers. There is no harm in taking cues from people who've been able to successfully lead a particular decade of development. So we need bankers, we need venture capitalists. In fact, this is going to be an entire body which would be making the entire PPP model. And when I say PPP, it's not a public-private partnership. It is a partnership for a public purpose that we are looking at. That is where we need to have a vision. These parks, these facilities need to be built up and plug-in play facilities. There is a prior regulatory approval so that the factory, when it is there itself, they have everything. I mean, they have a fire department, pollution department, electrical department, a factories act, everything towards themselves. There is an on-site office for the state drugs department, the BIS, the weights and measures, even GST and taxation needs to be looked at it. So it's like, an innovative kind of a as I've written, innovative kind of a showroom which you enter into, or an office which you enter into, where you have everything inside. And this is where I think the Department of Pharmaceuticals is having towards it, and we are also looking at a similar kind of a change which is going to happen. As I mentioned earlier, testing facilities, designer centers, tool shops, 3D and modeling shops. We look at the Andhra Meditec zone. That's an entire model zone that we are going to have. There is no dearth of technical support which we can provide. We've got enough people to look at it. Over the last couple of years, there's been enough where India has leaps and bounds got in terms of a repository. That needs to be really developed hard. That needs to be really, pooled and coupled also. All these are, certain areas which can really take forward the new spiel for the medtech industry in India. Obviously, supporting policy. I mean, these are certain ideas which IMED had in terms of how making manufacturing in India and having a competitive advantage. I've already discussed most of them, but looking at just a recap, everyone could look at the slide and really relate to what India can do when it has all these supportive and conducive policies around it. So the vision is to make India amongst the top 5 manufacturing hubs of medical devices. And this is not a small vision. It is a vision which the government of India has taken forward. The whole Ayushman Bharat, it needs to have a national and centralized reimbursement agency, so that the idea is to have a commonly recognized agency that has acceptance nationally and also in every state. This will simplify processes. So these are certain things where we can actually, such policies, if implemented, we can easily say that India is going to really list a new chapter amongst being the top manufacturing hubs globally. And as I end my slide, I would really look at this particular caricature which the government of India and the Make in India segment has. We are moving a lion's stride today, and it's a request to all industry colleagues and the government to seize this opportunity to revive the entire medtech industry, so that India ensures self-sufficiency, accessibility, availability, and affordability in healthcare. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my slide right now, and if there respond to the questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It was such an informative speech, very crystal clear. I just love the last one. Buy in India to make in India. That was excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I have a few questions for you. You spoke about the import dependency of medical devices.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? What do you think the solutions to reduce this import dependency in India?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. In fact, if you recall, a couple of weeks back, the government of India looked at indigenous and internal manufacturing. So that's where the PLI scheme, the production link scheme by the government of India, really forced into. And that is where we can have not only domestic but also global manufacturers who set shop here or set a manufacturing unit here, really churn out that kind of production to make India export more and more, and self-sufficient in terms of our own production. We've got enough. I mean, as I said, 40,000 plus crores of imported material does come to India. That's a huge amount. And if you can imagine, if the dependency goes down. In fact, today I was seeing a slide in the morning presented in your in the second session itself, where they talked about how other countries, when I talk about US, when I talk about the European Union countries, the big five countries, how they have
Mhm.
also been able over the past couple of decades to reduce their import dependence and increase the internal capacity and then become exporters. So this is India
Right.
also needs to look at a larger framework. The medical devices park, as I said in the couple of slides which I had in the last, they are going to
Yeah.
be enablers to it. And I'm very happy today when I heard the Honorable Secretary Pharmaceuticals just a couple of an hour back when I heard her. She said that it's not one, two, five, six states which are really in the hoarding run to actually have a medical device parks. It's more than 17 states in the government of India which are trying to leap into it. So you can imagine
Okay.
if we have ample production and ample manufacturing within 70% of India, at least 80%, 70% dependency just goes away.
Right. 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 So another question is that how much time do you think that India will be self-sufficient in making medical devices and make this story big enough
Well, we've already started that, that
on an optimistic note?
yeah, we already started that gallop, but the whole Make in India initiative, which the government of India initially started off with, was to attract FDI. But while there's been a considerable, FDI which has come in, but the amount of people who have opened manufacturing setups here in India has not increased. So I think with the present policies which have just come up by the government of India, and Honorable Minister Sadanand Gauraji a couple of weeks back did announce these policies, the medical devices park which are coming up, the PLI schemes which are coming up, the incentives which we are looking at in the next couple of months to come, the entire 20 lakh crore package. Although we're still trying to understand the of the 20 lakh crore project which the
Right.
finance
Right.
minister announced, if it really shapes up by the next couple of months, we would easily see India being one of the major countries which does not have dependency on at least key items. As I said, we've got almost like 7 to 8 items which come under the medical devices. So if most of the items are manufactured here, self-sufficiency or Atmanirbhar will be, not a distant dream in the coming years.
Right. Right. Excellent, sir. Excellent. So we would like to see medical device industry. I mean, we would like to see India as a one of the five major countries of production in the medical
Absolutely,
device
absolutely.
industry.
I
So
think
that's
even
that's a distant
Ayushman
dream.
Bharat, I mean, the more it goes into the national, the more it goes into dovetailing the state with the Ayushman project, that will be entire new step altogether. And India surely before time, I think the Prime Minister looked at the next 20 years. I think if
Yeah.
policies goes the way we are looking at, we can achieve it in the next 10 to 12 years.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you
Thank you
very much.
so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Thanks a lot for sparing your
No,
valuable
no, no, it was
time
a
and
pleasure.
be with
And in fact,
us.
I must congratulate the other speakers and also your entire team. I mean, very well managed sessions and very pertinent topics which you've come up with. And obviously, it's a set of speakers, people like Dr. Jitendra Sharma and others. They've been a real,
Yeah.
torchbearer in the country.
Right, 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 sir.
Thank you
Thanks
very
a
much.
lot, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
We'll be conducting these webinars in near future also, so we would be
Absolutely.
connecting with you.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Yes, stay in touch.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. Bye bye.